Welcome to our course on communication. Communication is really one of those crucial elements that we need to think about ahead of time. After every major disaster, communication is one of the areas that is always identified as an opportunity for improvement. So a little bit of legwork in the front end can make things a lot easier in a time of crisis or emergency. Our plans have to be adaptable and understand that people receive information in different ways. The good news is, now there's more options than ever to communicate with our families, with our staff, with emergency officials, and with all the external audiences that we need to keep in mind, such as licensing. Let's take a look at the topics and objectives that we're going to cover in this course. This course is designed to cover a lot of different aspects of communications. We will talk about how to receive information about emergencies and disasters, how to contact law enforcement and 911. We'll actually visit a 911 center and talk to the individuals that answer your 911 calls every single day. We'll talk about communication with staff and how that is a vital role to play during any kind of emergency or disaster. We'll also talk about parents and our external communication. How do we keep our clients, our customers, and our families happy and informed? We'll also talk about crisis communication plans and how we're going to communicate in the midst of an emergency or crisis. Let's take a look at some of the objectives for this course. By the end of this course, you'll be able to identify at least 2 ways to contact first responders during an emergency. You'll also be able to list the pros and cons of each of these methods. You'll be able to describe the essential elements of a crisis communication plan. You'll be able to discuss the various ways to push out information during an emergency. You'll also be able to define external stakeholders that may seek information during an emergency or a disaster. You'll be able to describe at least 2 ways that staff members can communicate internally during an emergency. You'll also be able to identify at least 2 methods of receiving emergency alerts and information. And you'll describe what type of information that is useful to assist 911 dispatchers during an emergency. At the onset, I think it's very important to think about how we need to have backup communication systems. We need to have redundancy built into the system. Our cell phones are wonderful pieces of technology, and most of the time, they work very, very well. They're convenient, they're small, they're portable, they go with us pretty much everywhere. But as we see during many natural disasters and many emergencies, cell phones are not a reliable means of communication. This is especially true in large and crowded areas. I'm sure all of us have had an experience when we're either at a large sporting event, at a movie theater, at a parade, or maybe even in the airport, where there's just too many people trying to use the cell phone towers at once, and the system becomes overloaded. There is only so much bandwidth that is available. Similar to large events, we often find that during and after disasters, it's very difficult to make phone calls using the cell phone network. They are simply overloaded and jammed with other people trying to use the service. So it's important for us to know the other ways that we can use our smartphone in a disaster. Email, Facebook, and other apps that use data may often be very slow to respond as well because they are taking a lot of bandwidth to get that data into your phone. One of the ways that is typically most effective during a disaster is to send a text message. Text messages are very short, very small. They don't take a lot of bandwidth, and they can easily be transmitted. So the next time you're finding yourself at a situation where your cell phone doesn't work or your data is struggling to load, you may very well switch over and just send a text message that has a much higher likelihood of being able to be sent out and be received to the ultimate person that you're trying to communicate with.